Hello and welcome. Tonight we bring you an explosive inside look at one of television's most revered institutions, a program that for more than 6 decades has stood as a pillar of investigative journalism, the legendary news magazine that dares to ask the hardest questions and shine the brightest light on the world's most pressing issues. But tonight we tell the story of a seismic shakeup behind the scenes, one that threatens to upend the very independence and integrity this program has long embodied. For 24 remarkable years, a single man has guided this juggernaut of journalism. With an iron will, an unerring sense of fairness, and an unshakable commitment to truth. His name is Bill Owens, a veteran producer whose tenure spans nearly a quarter of a century at the helm of the show, and a staggering 37 years within the walls of CBS News. Under his leadership, countless groundbreaking investigations have aired, exposing corruption at the highest levels, giving voice to the voiceless, and holding the powerful to account. Tonight, however, we reveal the astonishing reasons why Bill Owens just made the decision to walk away, resigning in protest rather, than surrendering the journalistic independence that is the lifeblood of honest reporting. Good evening, viewers. Let us take you on the journey from the first whispers of discontent to the thunderous announcement that rocked newsrooms across the country. Picture this: the hallowed editing bays and conference rooms where veteran correspondents pitch their stories, where raw footage is examined frame by frame, where the final text of each segment is debated until every word rings true. For years, Bill Owens presided over these rooms with a singular focus: that every story be accurate, fair, and unflinching in its pursuit of truth, regardless of how uncomfortable the spotlight might make some inside the corridors of power. But in the months leading up to his dramatic exit, the walls of those conference rooms began to feel less like a fortress of journalistic freedom and more like the lobby of a corporate headquarters, where boardroom decisions started to steer editorial choices instead of newsworthiness. The catalyst? A high-stakes corporate maneuver, the proposed merger between the program's parent company, Paramount Global, and Skydance Media. As talks progressed and approval from regulators and even the Trump administration became paramount, so too did the pressure on content. According to accounts from those closest to the situation, whispered warnings turned into explicit directives. Be mindful of stories critical of powerful interests. Temper investigative pieces that could ruffle feathers. In Washington, and above all, remember who's writing the biggest checks: the very soul of the show. The fearless independence that Bill Owens embodied was under threat. Our story truly begins in the polished studios of New York City, where the program first debuted in 1968. From those early days, it rapidly distinguished itself with ambitious, deeply reported segments on everything from Watergate to the Civil Rights Movement. Over the decades, it evolved into a cultural phenomenon. Its signature ticking stopwatch became an emblem of accountability, a promise that the powerful would be questioned, that hidden truths would be revealed. Viewers learned to trust the program implicitly, believing that what aired was a result of rigorous investigation, unsparing interviews, and editorial discretion free from corporate or political meddling. Enter Bill Owens, who joined CBS News in the late 1980s. He cut his teeth covering high-profile trials, international conflicts, and investigative stories that tested the limits of broadcast journalism. By the year 2000, he had ascended to executive producer of the program, a role in which he excelled beyond even the loftiest expectations. Under his watch, the show earned dozens of Emmy Awards and Peabody Awards, with iconic stories such as the expose of Enron's accounting fraud, the unmasking of corrupt public officials, and immersive dispatches from conflict zones around the globe. Each story carried Bill's trademark imperative: relentless fact-checking, deep context, and an unwavering commitment to fairness. It was journalism in its purest form, and audiences around the nation, and indeed the world, sat up and took notice. But as the years rolled on, the media landscape shifted. News consumption fragmented across digital platforms. Social media amplified the loudest voices, and traditional broadcasters found themselves in a battle for audiences and revenue. In response, CBS's corporate parent, Paramount Global, embarked on an aggressive strategy to diversify its holdings and bolster its entertainment empire. The proposed Skydance merger, announced with great fanfare, was to be the crown jewel. With Skydance's blockbuster film slate and Paramount story television library, the combined entity promised to be a content titan. But content comes at a price, and for a news organization that prides itself on its untethered editorial judgment, that price was independence. Sources inside the newsroom began to notice stories concerning powerful figures, from multinational corporations to government leaders, were subject to novel layers of review. Where once a veteran producer like Bill Owens could decide that a story was sufficiently fair and necessary for the public good, now there were additional sign-offs required by corporate affairs executives. Editors found themselves quietly advised to consider corporate sensitivities, a euphemism that sent a chill through the editorial staff. Rumors began to swirl. Had someone in a Paramount boardroom overruled a correspondent's request to pursue a particular lead? Had a draft segment on government policy been softened at the behest of executives worried about lobbying repercussions? In a world already cynical about fake news, the idea that a venerable news program might be constrained by commercial interests was anathema. By early April, the tension reached a breaking point. Bill Owens, who had long shunned the spotlight, felt that the editorial sanctity of the program had eroded. In an emotional phone call with his senior producers, he lamented that he no longer had the unfettered authority to uphold the rigorous standards that were his creed. Correspondents revered him as a guardian of journalistic integrity, fearless in the face of intimidation, unyielding when confronted with pressure, and endlessly patient in mentoring the next generation of journalists. Yet here he was, finding his hands tied in negotiations that had nothing to do with journalism and everything to do with corporate synergy. On Tuesday, April 22nd, Owens handed in his resignation letter, a 2-page document that would soon be published in full. In it, he wrote with candor and evident pain, "For the past few months, it has become clear that I would not be allowed to run the show as I have always run it, nor make independent decisions based on what is right for this program. Having defended this show and what we stand for from every angle and with everything I could, I am stepping aside so that the show can move forward. It is too important to the country to be compromised, but I cannot stay on as executive producer under these conditions." It was a letter that laid bare the fundamental conflict between editorial autonomy and corporate imperatives. When the latest Sunday night broadcast began, anchors delivered the usual opening tease. Stories on international intrigue, political battles, human interest profiles. But the final segment of the night shattered expectations. With a gravitas reserved for only the most consequential revelations, the anchor turned to the camera and addressed Owens' departure head on. "No one is happy about this," he said. Bill Owens felt he had lost the independence that honest journalism requires. Then, in terms that were uncommonly blunt for network television, he revealed the corporate changes that had prompted Owens' exit, Paramount's new oversight as it pursues the Skydance merger, and the implications of that oversight for the show's future. Viewers watched, riveted, as the anchor assured them that thus far, no stories had been blocked, but that Owens' perception of compromised independence was enough to drive him away. In the wake of that broadcast, social media ignited. Clips of the segment spread like wildfire, shared by journalists and viewers alike. Many shocked that a mainstream news program would so openly critique its own parent company. Veteran correspondents reposted the final segment on their personal feeds, offering words of solidarity. Bill is the heart and soul of this show. Wrote one, we owe everything to his courage. Wrote another. Even rival networks paused in their own coverage to note the extraordinary nature of the moment. Rarely does a top producer step down in protest. And even more rarely does the news magazine acknowledge it so transparently on air. So why does this matter to you, the viewer at home? Because it speaks to a broader struggle playing out across the media landscape. Trust in news organizations has never been lower. Surveys show that nearly 2/3 of Americans doubt that news outlets report the truth, and many believe that corporate or political agendas taint the information they receive. In an age of misinformation and clickbait, the role of bastions of serious journalism is more vital than ever. When a leader like Bill Owens, whose career is defined by fearless accountability, concludes that he can no longer guarantee the integrity of his own program, it raises profound questions about the future of independent reporting in a consolidated media world. And make no mistake, the stakes are high. Paramount's drive to finalize its merger with Skydance hinges on regulatory approval, and the Trump administration holds significant sway over that process. The former president, no stranger to denouncing critical coverage, even filed a $10 billion lawsuit against the network and its parent company, accusing them of manipulating an interview for political ends. Although the broadcaster ultimately provided complete transcripts to the Federal Communications Commission, the legal battle underscores the fraught nexus of journalism, corporate power, and political influence. It is against this backdrop that Bill Owens made his fateful choice: to remain silent and risk betraying the public's trust, or to walk away and sacrifice his own legacy for the soul of the program. As we reflect on this defining moment, it is worth remembering the program's storied past. The trailblazing exposés, the landmark interviews with world leaders, the fearless investigations that have reshaped public policy. It is a legacy built on the principle that journalism must be free from the sway of advertisers, executives, or politicians. Bill Owens understood that principle better than most. His tireless pursuit of truth earned him accolades and respect across the industry. And yet when that principle collided with corporate imperatives, he chose to step aside rather than compromise. What happens next remains uncertain. No replacement for Owens has been announced, and insiders suggest that finding someone with his blend of editorial rigor, managerial acumen, and moral conviction will be an extraordinary challenge. Will the program continue to operate as before, preserving the independence that audiences demand? Or will new leadership be more amenable to corporate oversight, leading to a subtle but irreversible shift in the show's character and credibility? Only time will tell. But one thing is clear: the drama playing out behind the scenes of this venerable news magazine is more than a personnel change. It is a vivid reminder of the tensions that define modern media. The conflict between profit and principle, between shareholder value and public service. As viewers, we have a role to play. We must demand transparency from our news organizations, hold them to the highest standards, and refuse to tolerate compromises that erode the very foundations of honest journalism. In resigning, Bill Owens left us with a powerful message that the independence of the press is priceless, that true journalism cannot flourish when shackled by corporate interests, and that sometimes doing the right thing requires personal sacrifice. His departure is a clarion call to colleagues in newsrooms everywhere, to executives who wield commercial power, and to every citizen who relies on the press to shed light on the world's most pressing truths. Thank you for joining us this evening for this in-depth look at the crisis unfolding within one of television's most iconic institutions. We'll continue to follow the story as it develops, bringing you updates on the search for a new leader, the status of the Paramount Skydance merger, and the broader implications for the future of independent journalism. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay informed, and never lose faith in the power of truth. Good night, and we'll see you soon.